Today's video, we're going to talk about enhanced versus server-side conversion tracking on Google Ads. Which one is more worth it? So these are two different ways to track conversions inside your Google Ads account, of which more conversion data and more accurate data will always mean more profits from Google Ads. It's one of the easiest ways to make more money from Google Ads. However, I haven't seen any videos out there that talk about the difference between these two in terms of what the results you're going to get when you use one versus the other, as well as the challenges actually using one versus the other. So I'm going to go through all of that on today's video here so you know exactly what to do for yourself in your situation. Given that if you are a business doing a certain minimum amount of volume, it's server-side tracking that you should go for. That's the Cadillac, if you will, or the Mac Daddy or Granddaddy tracking option with Google Ads. If you are technically challenged enough to actually do it, or you have a firm that you could count on to do it, given it's going to capture the most data that way, and significantly more data, I might add. So I'll go through what that is, and I'll go through the actual results we stated at the end of the video. I'll talk about the profit you're going to make on one versus the other, in addition to what you already have, and give you some actual case studies. So with that said, getting into the content here. Now, I first want to just start off with the definitions here. Enhanced versus advanced conversion tracking versus server-side tracking, okay? Now, enhanced conversion tracking, as Google calls it, which is one of the conversion tracking methods that they recently keep pushing. And what that is you're essentially giving Google the data from people who fill out the form on your site or purchase the shopping cart back to Google, so that if for whatever reason the cookie on the user's web browser did not actually fire, if you will, for lack of more simplistic ways to explain this, Google will use that email address or phone number that you collected from the form fill or the person's checkout when they put it in there when checking out through your shopping cart, and compare it to the phone number and email list of all their Google users, Gmail users, and if they find a match, they'll attribute a conversion to your account. Otherwise, what normally has to happen, of course, is that you have your conversion tag on your website, and that conversion tag needs to fire when they filled out the form or when they purchased. If it doesn't fire, you could use that email address or phone number to send the conversion event to Google Ads, or for them to see a conversion happen, as long as the person who filled out the form or purchased used the same email address / phone number as they did when they signed up for their Google account, and they're logged into their Google account when they filled out that form or made their cart purchase. Okay? So that's what enhanced conversion tracking is in a nutshell. Server-side tracking, on the other hand, what you're essentially doing is you're grabbing the Google Click ID wbraid / gbraid ID, which is in the URL bar of the user's browser when they get to your website. It's captured right away. Then, ultimately, later on, when they purchase, you send that data back to Google as your way to track a purchase or a form fill itself, okay? And so what you have is like this, whereas normally the actual data, it's actually, enhanced conversion tracking is actually one form or version of server-side tracking. But with enhanced conversion tracking, primarily the conversions are tracked to the user's browser itself. With server-side tracking, you're actually grabbing the Google Click ID and all that and putting it on your server, and then that same server tracks whether that person fills out the form or purchases or not to the cart. And if they do, that server is going to send that data back to Google Ads for you to track that purchase. And that's relevant / significant because if the user's browser does not render the pixel code on their browser, then no information will be sent to Google Ads. And that happens more often than you would think, which is why you're going to make more money with server-side tracking specifically, if you will. Now, that also said, okay, a couple more things about these two things. Number one, you can actually use enhanced conversion tracking as a way of doing offline conversion tracking. That is, if you want to, when somebody fills out a form and then they later on purchase, and you want to pass that information back to Google Ads, You could do that through enhanced conversion tracking itself by passing a conversion value back. That's a side benefit or use of it, if you will. Primarily though, the enhanced conversion tracking there is to track form submissions on people that are on a browser that, where the actual conversion pixel does not render on the user's browser, therefore no form submission data was able, or the fact that the form submission occurred was not able to be sent to Google Ads, if you will. And it's doing it and bridging that gap by using the email address / phone number, whereas with server-side tracking, it's doing the same thing itself, but not necessarily through the email address or phone number itself. However, to get even more confusing here, server-side tracking, whereas it grabs the Google Click ID /wbraid /gbraid from every user when they hit the site and store it, and then waits, the server then waits for the user to fill out the form or purchase to send that data to Google to track the user's purchase, so that in case the user's browser isn't able to process the pixel code, ultimately to send that data to Google on their browser from their browser. You can also do this so-called enhanced conversion tracking with server-side tracking, because you can enhance using an outside software like Easy Insights. You can do server-side tracking and enhanced conversion tracking at the same time. That is, you can send the Google Click ID to Google to fire a conversion when the user purchases without having to have the user's browser do it. But in addition to that, you can also send the user's email address / phone number to get a bit more conversion data, if you will. And that will add to, which is useful, because if somebody actually starts out and goes to your website and then switches devices and then they purchase there, that extra, having the email / phone number still being sent to Google will get you extra conversions itself, which is also, by the way, how enhanced conversion tracking also picks up a little bit more conversion data, if you will. So what I'm suggesting is, if you do server-side tracking, not only grab the Google Click ID, store it on your server and send it to Google, instead of letting the user send it to Google, so that the user's browser, if it doesn't JavaScript or they use an ad blocker, that their browser will not allow that pixel to process and send the data to Google. You are going to send it anyway to Google using your server, but also you're going to send email addresses and phone numbers that you collect from your users, in addition to the Google Click ID, to get the maximum conversion data possible. With all this said, I want to get into results that you can get with this, doing one versus the other. So one thing that you could already bet on right off the bat, if you just simply do enhanced conversion tracking, you're going to get 5 to 10% more conversions on a typical web shopping cart purchase conversion goal than you will get without enhanced conversion tracking. So instead of just tracking, enhanced conversion tracking again uses a conversion pixel itself. All that it does is it uses that data plus the email and phone number to get a few extra conversions. The email and phone number is going to get you an extra 5-10% more conversion data, so you should do it. Given that the 5 to 10% extra conversions you're going to get using the phone number and email address is going to get you more results with your ads. 5 to 10% more conversion data can easily get you 20 to 30% more profit from your account over time, because the data that you have is going to be a lot more accurate. It's going to be able to see particularly bigger purchases, because people that normally buy bigger amounts, they're more likely to switch devices before they buy, given that I mentioned that's part of the benefit of using conversion tracking, using email addresses and phone numbers in addition to an actual conversion pixel. And so then the algorithm that runs the ads is going to be able to run your ads in a direction that gets you bigger customers over time, if you will. And enhanced conversion tracking is actually pretty simple to set up itself, and it's cheap to set up, and it's cheap to maintain, if you will. So pretty much everybody should do this, at least when you're talking about cart purchase tracking. You could actually do enhanced conversion tracking with form submissions as well and get a few extra conversions, given that the people that get to your website that are using an ad blocker, therefore the pixel code will not render on that user's website, you'll still at least get some conversion data, back over to Google in that case, and it'll pick up some more extra conversions on your form tracking goal itself, right? That said, on forms specifically, instead of doing enhanced conversion tracking to track the people in which, the pixel cannot render on their browser because they're using an ad blocker or something like that, we use offline conversion tracking. And we grab the Google Click ID when they submit the form submission itself as a hidden form field. And then if that user is a qualified lead, we'll pass that back into Google Ads as a separate conversion goal. And we're going to optimize our campaigns on that qualified lead conversion goal, not just form submissions by itself. Now, of course, we could just take that Google Click ID and use that as our method to track whether somebody filled out the form or not and get around enhanced conversion tracking, and then do so via this Google Click ID by itself, using it and manually uploading it to Google Ads. We could do that. So for that matter, our firm doesn't really worry too much about doing enhanced conversion tracking on forms because we're already tracking whether that lead's qualified or not, passing the Google Click ID into the conversion goal that tracks that, and then switching the campaigns as soon as possible to optimize for qualified leads. I don't really care so much if we're losing a conversion or two on the regular form submissions, because we're not going to be optimizing on just purely form submissions at all by itself for very long, if that makes sense. So with that said, cart purchases, it's very valuable. Another thing to mention here is phone calls. You cannot do enhanced conversion tracking with phone calls. And a lot of you guys' businesses, 80% of the leads you get are from phone calls, not form fills. So enhanced conversion tracking, if you're doing lead generation and you get mostly phone calls, it's not really going to move the needle much for you, given that, you may get an extra 1 or 2% more conversion data in that case, given that 20% of your leads are form fills and 80% of them are phone calls. And you're only going to get 5 to 10% more conversion data on that form. You see, it's just not really worth it for you. Whereas with the cart tracking, it's always worth it. And I'm always going to set it up by default on the actual cart purchases because I want my extra 5-10% conversion data there. So now both server-side and enhanced conversion tracking for Google Ads both use first-party data itself. So like I said before, enhanced conversion tracking is a form of server-side tracking, technically, because you're grabbing first-party data from the user and you're storing it, and then you're sending it back to Google Ads, even though it's not really server-side tracking at all. Technically, all it's doing and all it's there for is to send first-party user data back to Google itself. Server-side tracking, going into this further here. Now, I should say before I go forward on this in terms of talking about like the results you're going to get with it, and then a few other tips to get these results. If you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, you absolutely should, because this information I talk about in reference to Google Ads, also Facebook ads and the like, you're not going to find better information than you're going to find on this channel elsewhere on YouTube, because this is practical information I'm learning by doing ad strategy at our firm on dozens of accounts, 40 hours a week, and then spend my weekend sharing what works and what doesn't work. I don't know anybody else who is that committed to the process of sharing information. And if the information is not coming from somebody in the weeds doing the work, the information is almost useless, if not useless. So you should subscribe if you really want to make lots of money running ads for your business, multi-millions. If you want to do that, you got to learn somebody actively doing it. I also got a great blog on my site. If you like the channel, you should check out the blog as well at guaranteeppc.com/blog. The blog has step-by-step instructions on how to actually replicate the strategies I'm using for clients to guarantee the results at our firm, with the screenshots and everything you need to use them. So you should check that out as well if you like the blog and if you like the channel and you're subscribed to the channel already. So for that matter, getting into the server-side tracking here again. The one great thing I could tell you right off the top in reference to server-side tracking is you can literally get 20% more conversion data over your standard pixel-based tracking conversion goals when you use server-side tracking itself, okay? And the reason for that is because ultimately 30% of users roughly now use ad blockers. And if you're using an ad blocker, the one thing the ad blocker does to block ads is it blocks scripts from being able to render on websites. It just blocks all the scripts. So if you block all the scripts, given that the pixel code is technically a script, it's not going to let the pixel code render on the user's browser. So then the conversion goal can't be tracked. So that's why server-side tracking is such the rage nowadays, because of these ad blockers that are out there, and all the ad platforms got them. Not only just Google has the conversion API for Google, Facebook's got a conversion API now, Snapchat's got a conversion API. All the main platforms have a conversion API to allow you to send your conversion data directly to them from your server, cutting out the need of a conversion pixel because of all these ad blockers that are blocking the pixel data and screwing up the ad performance of their client accounts in the process, if you will. That 20%, by the way, is a bare number that I have personally seen myself now happen multiple times at our firm. But that is in addition to the extra 5 to 10% of extra data you're going to get as well on top of that by sending the email and phone number list of the people converting to Google Ads as well. That's a bonus. If you're using Easy Insights, which is a software, you can not only send the Google Click ID, which in and itself will get you extra conversion data using server-side tracking, but when you send the phone number and email list, you get an extra 5-10%. So you could be getting upwards of 30% more conversion data by using server-side tracking, sending the Google Click ID, and sending the phone number / email address to enhance the conversion stream that you're sending to Google Ads via their conversions API here, okay? Server-side tracking gets around the pesky ad blockers. Now here's the bad news with server-side tracking, which is why not everybody isn't using it yet, including our firm for small clients that are just like, maybe they're doing $500,000 a year in revenue. And we're just starting out with a $3K a month ad campaign. We may not do server-side tracking right away because the amount of money it costs, client doesn't want to swallow it, and that's fine, because for your typical firm to set this up to, where they're going to stamp their name as, hey, this works right, you're talking about a $3,000 to $10,000 fee from a reputable firm. Now you could easily go and you could pay a freelancer $1,000 to get this done, but the freelancer's not there when it breaks, and then you got to hire somebody else, and then that other person's got to figure out what the other person did. And, obviously there's problems existing with that. Or you figure it out how to do it yourself. I will tell you that the software like Stape, I would recommend more so like Fresh Paint or Easy Insights, particularly Easy Insights. You can do server-side tracking without even being a programmer because the tutorials are so good, and that's part of what you're paying with those software. But you could pay no fee at all, if you will. That said, though, the other prohibitive problem with running server-side tracking is there's a fee to maintain the server that has to capture the data, the Google Click ID data, and the more traffic you have coming to the site, the more data there is to store. And that in itself can be $1,500 a month just to run that server. And then you got the cost of ongoing maintenance of that server-side tracking, of which, by the way, one of the other benefits of server-side tracking is it's more reliable, particularly when you're using software like Easy Insights that'll give you real-time alerts when your server-side tracking setup is not working correctly. So in other words, just like a website, there's services out there that'll tell you when your website's down, send you a text. The same thing can happen with your conversion tracking. With your server-side tracking setup, if your Google Click ID is not being captured, or you're getting an error when sending that data back to Google Ads, you can get an alert on your phone, literally speaking, telling you to fix it immediately, or your tracking guy to fix it immediately. The quicker that you fix it, the less likely your campaigns are going to go back into learning mode. What we found is if you can get a tracking break fixed, typically within 24 hours, your campaigns aren't going to go back into learning mode. Even PMAX campaigns, which are the most sensitive type of campaign to run. For that matter, server-side tracking can be worth it just for that reason alone. That is, unlike with your pixel-based tracking, you don't really know if that's working or not. You always know with your server-side tracking setup, whether it's working or not, because you're getting real-time feedback on how much data is captured and sent to Google Ads itself in real time there. And when there's an irregularity, it's not sending the data, it's not being received right by Google, you'll know right away and can go to town and fix it right away. Which, having somebody on hand that can respond right away, that's a whole other thing. which if you're gonna, people don't really think into the future with Google ads, but if you're gonna make millions of dollars running Google ads and you're gonna start with your $100 a day ad budget and then you want it to be a $10,000 ad budget eventually 10 years down the road, there's gonna be a point in which the tracking is gonna break. Eventually it always does. And when it breaks, you gotta know when it's broke, and you gotta have somebody that can fix it quickly. And the longer it takes to realize it's broke, and the quicker it takes to find somebody to fix it, the more likely the campaigns are gonna go back into learning mode. Your business is now, since you've built up massive overhead in your business, and if you can't take a 50% haircut in your sales for 2 weeks while you figure out the tracking's broken, and then finding somebody to fix it, and then them having to fix it, you need to have a setup that will let you know that the tracking's broken as quickly as possible and know exactly what you're gonna do when it breaks. All that can be done within 24 hours if you know what you're doing, either through the easy insights and getting alerts through that, or if you're even gonna just not do server-side tracking, you're just gonna use the regular conversion pixel on your website. It means setting up a backup goal in your ad account, which I talk about setting up your primary goals through Google Ads, and then your secondary goals through Google Analytics, so you can directly compare in your conversion menu how many conversions you got on your primary goal versus your secondary. So if your primary goal starts showing less conversions than the secondary goal or backup goal, then you know there's something broken and you can go to town fixing it as soon as possible. But that's still not going to be as good as having the real-time data flow from the server-side tracking that you're doing and literally tell you, okay, this many visits to the site came, this is how many GCLIDs we captured, this is how many we sent, and having that real-time data. So with all that said, if you will, I know this is probably giving you a headache for the average Joe business owner. Reach out to my firm if you're interested in asking questions about this. I can tell you not only how to do this the right way to get you the most results with your ads, but 20 other ways that can make you more money with your Google ads. And of course, if you hire our firm to do it, there's no fees until you get a certain minimum lift in your profitability. Do a private call with me to talk about this stuff. You can reach out to me at our firm at guaranteedppc.com, set up a call with me for coaching and or consulting. I also, by the way, have been selling ad templates recently. I've worked in over 100 different niche markets over the last decade plus, working with clients at our firm at our advertising agency, PPC agency. And with that, if we worked in our niche market that you've been in, we can literally sell you the winning ads, landing pages, campaign templates that work for your niche market. You copy, paste those into your ad account and get the same results we did with none of the time, hassle, and work that it took for us to figure out how to run results like what we can tell you we can get with it up front for yourself. Cut all that work out that we had to do to get those results. And for that matter, you should at least find out what results we got into your market, because you're saving yourself so much time and grief. You can cut all that out just by using the template that we have that works in a different geographic market that you're in or different country that you're in. For that matter, one thing I do also as a side here, if you are going to do the server-side tracking, you need to make sure you're getting the campaign ID on the final URL suffix of your account. You can do this at the account settings level or part of your Google Ads account. Otherwise, you will not be able to collect the gbraid and wbraid codes from the user's web browser. Because ultimately, and just to give you a quick background on this, Google Click ID was like a serial number tied to every ad click that came through Google's system. They had this for about 15 years now. Recently, over the last 3 or 4 years, Google, because of iOS privacy updates, there is now, in replacement of a Google Click ID in about 10% of the instances, a wbraid and gbraid itself. And so in order to get the iOS conversions tracked, in replace of Google Click ID, the gbraid or wbraid is there in the user's URL bar and in the URL when they get to your website that you need to be able to, of course, collect for the server-side tracking to happen. You need to actually make sure the wbraid and gbraid is in that actual URL itself. And then you're going to want to do that. And then also when you pass it back to Google, in addition to that, making sure that it's attributed to the right campaign, so that the gbraid and wbraid codes that you upload are attributed to the right campaign and the tracking is all cohesive at the end of the day, if you will. So that's just another small tip, if you will. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. This took me a long time to wrap my head around in general. I'm an advertising guy, and even I was able to get it. Maybe you have to watch this video a couple times to really wrap your head around it completely. But the number one way, going full circle on this video here, that get more results on Google Ads is to set up better tracking. If you don't have the best of the best tracking, you're gonna get less results, period. That's just how it is. This isn't to be disputed anymore. Sometimes it's easier to make a better ad to get better results, that is true, but once you're kind of hitting a roadblock with what you're doing and you're scratching your head, the tracking is just a gimme. So you wanna focus on that. I have a brand new group, that PPC/marketing group, that, people that are watching my videos that wanna talk amongst each other, talk to me. They can do that in the Discord group that I opened up. You can find a link to that Discord group in the video description. I've got a free PPC course in there for you, just for, as a thank you for joining the group. But I'm in there, you can ask me questions. But there's a lot of other people that subscribe to this channel, really smart cats that you can ask questions and talk to as well by getting in that group. It's decently active already at this time, since I've opened it. Beyond that, I've also been looking for investments. I am an investor now. I've been successful enough in what I'm doing here at our advertising firm that I've started to invest in websites and / businesses where if I see a great product or service that's honestly great but lacks advertising skills, that the company's lacking skills in doing advertising for that product or service, I'll come in and say, hey, I'll give you the free ad spend. I'll give you the free resources of our agency resources to get your ads working. In exchange, if you can give us 5% of your growth and sales moving forward, we'll give you a cash injection up front, and we'll be your full-time resource for managing all your ads moving forward. And that is the arrangement. We've done this with several companies to date, of which are doing minimum multi-millions more a year in sales just as a result directly of what we're doing with the ads. If you're interested in having us invest in you as such, reach out to me and I can give you references of the companies that we've already invested in and can talk to you about that. But reach out to me at guaranteeppc.com if you're interested in talking about this as well and having us evaluate your company. With that said, I'm going to wrap everything up with that. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. If you want to see another video, click here. It is one of my best ones.